All right, we're back. We are COMP397 in the fall 2018 semester, and we are week 11, part 2 of our broadcast. Animation and sprites continued. Wow, we just had a major internet failure, and wherever it stopped, it stopped. But let's review what we've got so far. So we talked about Texture Packer, which is a really cool little toy that we use for, which is $54.99. I recommend it. It's the thing that I recommend to use to make your sprite sheets. We talked about that. And then what we did was we packed up Texture Packer with all of our sprite sheets by dragging and dropping into this format. We adjusted this everything, all the objects, so it looks like this. And we also sorted by name. That was the thing we wanted to do to make sure it aligns properly. Then I pressed the publish button, which created, going back over here, a couple of objects in my sprites folder. I created a JSON file, which I modified. I just made these all zeros. And what I did was also modify some of this. So I have my animations for my bullet, my cloud coin, and I specified a speed of animation, which we're going to modify later on, for everything, including island, plane, and buttons. And then I have a texture map. This is what the texture map would look like now, and we're going to use this in our game. So in our core game, we copied that data in as a texture data object, a variable. And I also created something called sprite sheet or texture map, which is of type create.js.spritesheet. That's where we've left off. We've also updated our asset manifest to remove stuff that we're already going to be loading with our sprite sheet, as opposed to using individual files. We're not going to be using individual files for those things anyway. The only one individual that we're going to load is our ocean.gif. Okay, so that's pretty good. All right, now next part. We have to go to the next step here. So yeah, we've got our animations. Everything is fantastic, but we've got to load our sprite sheet. And if you look down further in our examples, you can see that this is the example that I recommend. So this example here, we have our data, and then we're going to have our new sprite sheet, and we're going to define it. We're going to pass the whole data JSON file inside of this as a parameter of the sprite sheet itself. And then every time we want to use our sprite, we're going to call upon it by using the play keyword. So we're going to play that particular sprite as opposed to the way we've done it so far. Okay, so that is what we're doing. Let's check out what that is. So again, we have to instantiate a new sprite. Okay, so let's go back to our code. So where would we do that? That's the thing. Now I know what I want to do. I want to be able to preload my sprite sheet. Right now my sprite sheet resides at asset sprites texture map. However, what I want to do is preload it eventually in here. And that means it's going to happen after the init function somewhere. All right, where I kind of create my sprite sheet after it's got preloaded. And when everything is complete, then I'm going to go here and load my sprite sheet. And definitely somewhere between my canvas, my enable mouse, all this stuff, it's got to be somewhere in here. So I recommend, before my scoreboard and my current state and all that stuff gets triggered, I want to create my sprite sheet. It doesn't really matter where, but it's got to be in the start function. So I'm going to say texture map is equal to a new create.js.spritesheet. I'm going to pass in a reference to my data, which is my texture data. Okay, so that's the first thing I want to do. But later on, what's going to happen with my texture map is I want to be able to access it from other objects like the plane and the enemy and other places. And in order for me to do that, it has to be accessible outside of my game.ts file, which means that I have to include it in my manager's game.ts. This up here, which means I'm going to make a new one, public static thing called, I'm going to call this texture map. Previously, I used to call it assets. Texture map makes more sense. I'm going to use, it's going to be of type create.js.spritesheet. And this way I can access it from anywhere. But however, to make this all work, I've got it in my core. When I declare an object of type spritesheet and pass my texture data to it, I want to make a reference to managers.game dot texture map is equal to texture map. I want to pass a reference to it in my game manager. Yep. And this sets up my global sprite sheet. That's what it does. So set up global sprite sheet. This does, okay? Great. We've set up our global sprite sheet, but I'm saying this is a big but, right? Putting it out there for you guys. Guess what? Our classes are all messed up still. Inside of our objects, we have to go to game object for a second. Here's my game object superclass. Uh-oh. My game object superclass is a bitmap. And it can't be a bitmap. It needs to be a sprite. So let's see if the changes are going to happen. I got to change this from bitmap to sprite. Okay, so that's the first thing that needs to change. So now all my objects are sprites. Uh-oh. 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 This isn't going to work anymore, right? Because in my constructor, it's going to say managers.game.assetManager.getResult. That doesn't compute, right, for sprites. Sprites need to be passed in a sprite sheet. That's what it needs to do to be passed in. So I have to pass in a sprite sheet, right? And I have to specify what I'm going to show, which is the image string. So that's a totally different way of doing things. Let's undo that change. All right, so now we have some thinking to do, right? One, I'm going to have problems with my ocean. Because if I look at my ocean, that's the biggest bottleneck right now. My ocean, it looks like this. And it inherits from objects.gameObject. What am I going to do now? I can't inherit from object.gameObject, or I need another game object. I need two game objects. One game object, which is of type bitmap, a bitmap game object, right? And the other one, which is a sprite game object, okay? Any recommendations before we move on? Because, guys, this is going to determine how the rest of my game flows for this semester, right? It's going to be a turning point, if you will. We need to refactor because at this point, if we want to use sprites, we need to make at least one game object that is, sprites. So what do you recommend? Anybody have a recommendation? This is your game. This is your game engine too, not just mine. I'm going to start picking people, and then you're going to be recorded on live on the internet forever, right? Your voice will be on here. You'll be infamous, like me, infamous, not famous. Okay. Gerardo, it's your first, buddy. I want to know what your opinion is. You're being recorded live now on the internet forever. Tell me, what is it that you would do? What would you do? You have a game object. It's a bitmap, but it's going to mess things up. I have two different kinds of things I need to create. One that's a sprite, which is most of everything except for the ocean. What would you do? A recommendation. I may not do what you say, but just recommend. Think about this as an interview, all right? No recommendation. Fired. Sorry, I'm joking, right?
It's just that what I have seen is that they handle the backgrounds in this way, right? Only one image, and that's it.
So what would you do? How would you change the game object? Would you change the game object? What would we do? We need to use sprites because we have to use animations. We can't do animations without it so easily.
Yeah, I have no idea.
You have no idea. Okay, let's go to Wesley. Wesley, what are your thoughts?
Probably not a good idea to directly change game object. Maybe make a sprite game object.
Okay, I could do that. Sprite game object, bitmap game object, rename everything, refactor. I could do that. That's one option. Pedro, what's another option?
Change game object.
Change game object. So change game object to two different kinds, right? One that uses a sprite, the other one that uses a bitmap. That's the easiest thing to do.
Yes.
Least amounts of work. And we have an extra copy, if you will, of a game object. Now, not refactoring, but I could make a super duper class, which is like game object. That's the superclass, super class, abstract class. And then a subclass.
Do we have generics?
We do. That's the other way to do it. So that's a good question. So let's take a look at generics really quickly. Again, this is a refactoring step, which we're not going to do today. All right. But if you wanted to do this, if you look at typescriptlang.org, we're using TypeScript for this project, which I think is an invaluable tool. And if you look at generics, you can see that it has generics here in terms of setting up this stuff. That's function generics. And I think it's the same way for classes. I think so. Generic types, interfaces, classes. There we go. So it's everything that we would normally expect. T for the type, right? And then this way, if we made our game object, right?
We could have whatever underlying, as long as it's a display object type, we would be able to pretty much get away with anything.
We could possibly do that. My challenge is that in the constructor function, the constructor function will be slightly different for each type because
you would have to check the type and then do
it. It's
not easy.
It's not easy. It can be done, but I think there would be some mess around the constructor function because in the constructor function of our game object right now, my superclass, I have not ocean, but if I go to my game object superclass, I have this right where I take as image string. This is okay, but this part here, the super constructor will be different depending on what type of game object it is. So that would be where generics might not work so good in JavaScript, TypeScript. All right, but for now, we're not going to do that. We're going to make a duplicate of this thing. So I'm going to make a duplicate. So the best way to do it would make just make a new file. And we'll rename everything afterwards. So I'll make a duplicate of this called, and again, we might want to call this Sprite game object. I know it's ugly, but we can always rename later. So new file, we'll call this Sprite game object.ts. Okay, so cool. It doesn't really do anything, but if I go to my game object and copy everything, this is where when we say copy everything in your mind, again, you should say, I need something else before this, right? Because I'm duplicating code, and I don't want to duplicate code. Duplicating code is very bad, right? So then paste. What the heck? Undo. Let's try that again. That was weird. Game object. Copy. And paste. Yay. Okay, now, so instead of game object, we'll call this Sprite game object. And in here, it'll extend a create.js.sprite. We're not going to affect anything right now. We do need to change this part because we don't care about loading using an asset manager. We're not using the asset manager here. However, we do need this. We need the sprite sheet, which is managers.game.textureMap. And the image string, which is the sprite name. Okay, that's what we need. Other than that, that's it. That's all it takes for us to use a sprite. We don't have to really change anything else. Okay, now let's leave game object the way it is for now. And the only thing we need to change is all the other ones. So if I go to bullet now needs to use sprite game object. And I'm going to go into button, same. Oh, yeah. Oh no. Uh-oh. Oh, whoa. That is messed up. Okay, so now we have to that's another change we have to think about. So maybe we want this one to use, no, we need to use this one too. So it needs to be, yeah. We'll fix this in a second because it says that it incorrectly extends this because, yeah, of course it would because this is wrong. Okay, so again, we have to change this. So we'd have to say, make this way. We have to change, these are the things we have to change. Managers.game.texture map, there it goes, this. And yeah, so So why is it giving me problems here? Because it says, well, this is a sprite. It extends the sprite properly, but something's wrong. Because this is wrong, right? We're just going to pass in a reference to the image string. That's all we need. Like this. And that should correct this problem.
It's because of like what
Yeah, we're redeclaring this stuff, right? Because we don't need to redeclare this. And so with height, all this stuff, we can probably, we were actually not supposed to, we were supposed to do this anyway, but I think we just can just get rid of all this stuff because, yeah. The constructor's good, but these are okay. And it needs start, I believe. Let's put that in there too. It needs a couple of functions. It needs to implement inherited classes, these ones here, which remember, because it's now a game object, I'm going to make these as private, or no, they're public, right? They're public methods. They must be public. Yeah, so these are going to just be empty. And we can actually leave it this way because we're never going to do an update function or a start or reset function for this stuff for a game object for my my button. This stuff can remain this way, the way it's method not implemented because we're not using it right now, right? If we call the reset, start, or update or destroy method, then yeah, we're going to get an error, but that's okay, right? So that is our button class. Whoa. That's the first one too. We thought that was the easiest one, but actually, of course it's not, right? Bullets, we have some changes to make too. I figured out that we forgot to do some stuff. So bullet is the same. Okay, cloud. Cloud, that is sprite game object, sprite. And again, what we have to do here is change this part inside of our constructor function. We pass in cloud, that's okay, right? Enemy, sprite game object, that's no problem. And island, sprite game object. And label, no, something else. Ocean, no, it's just a game object. Player, yes, that has a change. And scene, we don't have to change, but sprite game object, we have some duplication, which we're going to come back to in a second. Okay, so now let's save all. File, save all. And that should save everything. Let's go to the scenes and see where there's a problem. In my TS file, there is a problem. My play.ts, it's all down here now. All right, why? Collision check. Managers.collision.check. And let's go into the check function and see why that is. Let's go into go to definition. And why? Oh, because it's a game object. And of course, it's not game object anymore. We're checking sprite game objects. Right? Because we're not going to kind of check any of these. This is good. And you could have said, Tom, you could have refactored. No, I couldn't. Because these are all different the way I did it. All right, cool. So, yeah. And do we have any other errors? No. So if everything works out, we should be fine. And by the way, guys, it never works out. I've never seen it. And whenever I've done this changeover, I've never been here and then, yay, it works. Never. All right, because there's always something that I forgot somewhere. All right, let's see these myriad of areas that we're going to get here. Yeah. At least it's in the same places. So it says that type error object prototype is not defined in button under my vector2.js. Okay. So that is something. Vector2.js, it says that we don't know object port may only be an object or null. Okay, so my button is complaining. My buttons are definitely complaining. The other one is the start method has some problems and the game.ts method has some problems. But I think these are all related to the button problem. And I think that's the big problem here. We've messed something up when it comes to the button, and that is an issue. Let's go into vector2 on line 9 and see what it's complaining about. So going back to my vector2 class, and I'll just kill all this stuff so we have more room. And we'll go to our util.vector2 on line 9. Oh, yeah. Okay. So vector2 is of type point. And how is this affecting button? Okay. It has a X and Y coordinate for the button. And go back to objects. My button class. So what is it really doing? Oh, I'm getting bounds for width and height. Buttons do have bounds because they're bitmaps. Now they're sprites. That works. If it's centered, I can set that up. That's good. This X and this Y is equal to X and Y. And then my alpha, and I've got a bunch of these, which I don't care about. Let's just get rid of these because I don't want to somehow, I don't want to set up this ever just to not throw errors. Reset, start, update, and destroy. Yeah, that didn't seem to do anything. So let's go back up to the top and see where this is being on line 2 and on line 57 and line 82 and line 130. What's line 57 on my button? So button line 57. Oh, that's bullet. Button line 57, which is the end of my file. Did I mess up? Export class. Okay, so this is my module. This is my class. These are my methods. And then
There might be a like Sprite game object, and then it's affecting all the classes it's extended.
yeah, let's see. Sprite game object has all this. Width, height, half height is position colliding. And I did all this stuff. Oh. And when I set this up, it sets up the height and width, half width positions. Oh, this is it. So is colliding, like it gets all this stuff because, I mean, not that it's going to be colliding, but returns all this stuff, and then it takes the image string, whatever the button is called, which I'm passing in, and creates my texture map in my image string, and then I set up this initializer, which sets up my width and height. Oh, I see why. Sorry. So I'm actually repeating myself. So this get bounds width and height have already been done, and so I don't need to do that on my button class. So go back to my button class. And when I do all this centered stuff, then I don't need to do this anymore because that's already been done. So I just check to see if the regex value is what they are, because I can't do that. Okay, good. So let's see if that fixed it. No.
Oh yeah, I think check your index.html, make sure
it's in the right order. Yeah. So index.html. Oh yeah, we didn't add in Sprite. We didn't add that in.
I think that's why it doesn't recognize.
But that's beautiful. That is an easy thing to fix, but we fixed other things too. So yeah, so this is just going to be in here like this, and we just call this Sprite game object. Sprite game object. That was good. Thank you. Good catch. And that should, yay, do everything. Okay, we're good to go. So things to note is the button still works. Does it work? Yes. Do these things move around? Yes. Do they score? Do they collide? Yes. And if it didn't, right, for example, if I'm not losing anything functionality-wise, let's see if it still fires. So again, we're just doing testing after I've modified everything, including sprites and everything else. Guys, this is working great. And now I'm using sprites, but let's take a look. My plane is actually rotating its propellers. Look, my plane is working, and so is the enemy plane. Notice that? My plane is animating, except it's animating a little bit slow. I might want to go a little bit faster, like 0.4. So let's do that. So I'm going to go back to my core game.txt. Pedro, you see it? So now I went too slow. I probably want to do like 0.4 or 0.3 and something like that. So save, and let's try that out now. Yeah, that's better. That's a much better animation rate. And there's my my enemy plane, which looks pretty good. Want to see the enemy? Yeah, that looks pretty good. You can see the things going on right now. Cool. So we got some animation, guys. Some simple animation. It's only the propellers for now, but this is good. All right. Okay, let's put the explosions into place now. So first, this is good work. I'm going to suggest we're 6:06 right now. We're about halfway through, and I'm going to suggest a little bit of refactoring. Okay, I don't normally want to do this. However, I cannot live with myself if I don't do something with all that duplicated code. There's just like so much duplicated code, and it drives me crazy. So first thing first, I'm going to put this up on GitHub because we don't want to kill this part. So all this stuff gets added in. I'm going to say I implemented or added sprites to the game. That's it. I think it's kind of a generic thing. Probably could have made a lot more commits here, but whatever. Next, let's make it so that our sprite sheet is preloaded, like Pedro suggested, right? Because now everything works, right? So I think this is a great opportunity for us to do this. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to do this. I want to load the texture map and load it in here. Okay. How does that work? Well, it's kind of asynchronous, so it kind of can work okay. What I want to do is take one of these. Actually, I'll do it here at the ocean level. Here's my ocean. And I want to make this, I'll call this texture map. Texture map. And what we're going to do is we're going to say assets, sprites, and texture map .png. So I'm loading it in. There it is. This is where I'm preloading it. Okay. Once I've preloaded it, it's happening here. I've preloaded it. Then I'm calling my data, which is happening here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do what I normally do. I'm going to say asset manager get results. I'm going to put in here the sprite sheet, right, which is texture data, texture map. Okay, so now what this is doing is it's saying, hey, look, guess what? My images, I'm going to get my image file from this texture data right here. Does that make sense? So I'm kind of putting it in after it's loaded. So if this works, then now I'm preloading. But here's my problem. This is what I talked about before. I'm trying to preload something that hasn't worked yet. It hasn't worked. And I'm getting this thing that says, okay, cannot read property of get result of undefined. Why is that? Because texture data is trying to read the asset manager when asset manager hasn't been defined yet, right? I'm trying to do things in the wrong order. Asset manager gets created here, and then, and only then, after it gets created, do I want to create the object. But somehow it's being created beforehand. Even if I put it lower down, it doesn't really matter unless I put that whole definition inside my start method. You understand what I'm saying? So instead of this whole thing, this texture data thing being here, I could take this whole thing and cut it and put this whole thing inside of my start, right? Somewhere before I'm defining my sprite sheet, like this. And now texture map would be defined, right? Because images is my texture map images. And then once that's done, I'm going to take that and put it in here. So it's kind of a local variable here instead of a global variable. Not really happy with this at all, but we got this. So now what's happening is our texture map is being preloaded. That makes sense? Why? Because I'm waiting for the preloading to complete before I call my start method. Now that I have something, I can input it in here. The asset manager has been defined. Okay. Now, again, I'm not happy with this in terms of the way it works. So what I could do is take all this, package it off, and put it inside of a method, and then you wouldn't have all this mess inside of your start method. But for now, this is the one thing that works. So here I'm going to say we modified one thing. We can always go back. I'm going to do another little commit. I'm going to say preloaded texture map, because that's what I've been doing. And this is cool because that means that my texture map, instead of it waiting to load, I'm loading it first and then I'm using it afterwards, which is way better than if I don't preload stuff. So it's going to be a bit of a delay when it loads, but everything is loading in the right order now. Okay. Okay, next. And then, by the way, I've done this. There's another way. Can anyone think of another way to do this? Can you think of another way to do this? Well, I could take this back out, and instead of putting asset manager get result texture map, I could create another object in here instead of images. I could set the images later. So images, I could just say texture data.images and then set the images to get result. Right? I could do that later on. So what I mean by that is, instead of placing it in there, I could just leave it where it was and then access the texture map after everything's been loaded. But this is fine too. And that's what I did the previous iteration in last semester. Okay. So again, slight differences. Now, this is where I want to do the most work before we move on. I have these two game objects, game object and Sprite game object. I want to rename game object to bitmap game object. Okay. So let's do that's the first rename. That's the first part I want to do. So I want to go up here and rename the actual file. I'm going to call it bitmap game object.ts. It's going to cause a bit of a hubbub in my code. One is I got this JS file that I don't need anymore. Going to delete it. Sure. I've got this game object map that I don't need anymore. I'm going to delete it. I also have to update my index.html. That would change to bitmap game object, right? That's cool. And also my bitmap game object has to change my game object superclass to say something else. Here I'm going to rename symbol. Now, hopefully this works across files. Let's see what happens. So rename symbol. I'm going to call this bitmap game object and press enter. And that should change all kinds of files. Okay. However, did it? Add this dot ocean. Why is this giving me a problem? It's not a single parameter of display object. What's the ocean? Ocean. Did it actually update the ocean? Ocean.ts. It did. Bitmap game object. So what's the problem? Bitmap game object. Div type create just bitmap. I've got no errors here. Why would it do that? What did it change? I changed this one and it took away game object, but it didn't change anything else. Why? Ocean.ts. Oh, this has to change. Definitely changes. Yeah, so that's definitely got to refactor. And that should be it. That's the only thing that changed. Look, my bitmap ocean, right? Because ocean was the one thing that changed. When I refactored, Visual Studio Code was smart enough to redo this one. Let's go back and see if it's running. It is. That's good. I'm happy with that. Cool. Now, I'm going to add a super duper class called game object. And this is where I'm going to save some space. Okay, now bear with me. Don't be mad. Okay, the new file, I want to call it GameObject. .ts. Okay, it's going to be a module, and my module objects is where I'm going to put it. And inside my module objects, I'm going to go into my Sprite game object, and I'm going to take almost everything because it has everything. And then I'm going to go into my game object superclass and paste it in, but change the name to protect the innocence game object, which is going to not extend anything actually, like this. The game object is going to have width, height, half height is colliding, width and height, all this kind of stuff. Yeah. And then I'm going to come down to here. And it's going to say superclass. I don't need a superclass because it doesn't extend anything. Right? It's going to take an image string, and it's going to, the name is going to be the image string, but the name is not a display object. That's kind of weird. So what is name? So I could make this a create.js display object, right? Could I not? I want to inherit from my game object to something else. I want to be able to somehow save myself some time in order for me to do this. So like going back to what you said, Pedro, I want to try this, right? I want to make my class game object a generic, right? I know. Let's see if we can do this. We have some time. So again, it's going to be the class, whatever it's going to be called, and then in square brackets, we're going to make it T for type. Okay, let's see if this works. So again, we're going to go T for type, right? No. That's the first thing. So the type that it is. Okay, now we need to bring back that superclass because we have this, we need to call the super constructor because there's going to be a super constructor here for sure, right? And we're going to pass in. Actually, let's undo first to get that back because I don't want to spend too much time doing that. Yes. So here's my type. Okay, so gosh darn it. You know what I want to say. All right, so I got this, and yeah, so now it's going to do this, and it's going to say, wait. I can only be referenced in a derived class, right? But I'm not deriving anything. So do I need a superclass here? Right? I'm making a generic class now, something that's totally generic. So in my superclass, it's not going to call anything, right? So this is gone. I'm going to let my other thing manage that thing, right? Okay, do I need to pass an image string then into this class?
Yes.
How about name? Like this is going to be weird. How about get bounds? How about all that stuff? And the other thing is this: do I want to extend create.js display list, a display object? Which one is it? I can't do display list because it's quiet, right? I could make it a container, right? But then it'll have a name. That doesn't make sense. So I could make it display object, right? Now display object, and if I go back to create.js for a second, and remember, I don't have to inherit this right now. My stuff is running, right? So this is where I want to experiment. I'm doing some experimentation here with you guys, right? So if you go back up to the top, you can see that my Sprite sheet class is of type event dispatcher, but my Sprite is what I want to change. So my Sprite is of type display object. So what I'm doing here is I'm saying it's going to be the superclass of my Sprite or bitmap anyway. Well, what about bitmap? Is bitmap display object? We're good, right? So we don't know what it is, whatever the type is, but whatever it is inherits from game display object. Now, going back over here, we know that we need a superclass, right? Where the superclass is going to pass in something, right? This is where it's going to be a problem. Now, notice that I can't pass in image string. I can't do something like this because guess what? My display object doesn't take anything, okay? but I need to call the superclass event dispatcher because that's what display object inherits from event dispatcher. Okay, so this is good. I've got all this. Yay, we're good to go, right? And this is all good. But now, and this is definitely an abstract superclass. That's also a generic. And let's go back to our documentation for TypeScript. So yeah, we've done this, and I want to create a new object of type number, right? Where a generic number is equal to this. But how do I inherit from a generic class? And this is interesting. So here's my function, generic extends something.
Oh, so we want T extends display object?
I could do that. So I could go up here and say T, and then in brackets extends this. So that is a different thing. Get out of here. That is weird because, but then going back to my constructor, that is weird now. Super can only be referenced in a derived class. So this gone again, and so would this. So now these get bounds would not function anymore. So I think the way we had it was correct. So this definitely is the way we want it. It extends the game object, and there is a generic type. But depending on the type that we're doing, we want to call a different super constructor. That's the weird thing. How do we inherit?
We have to have T as a property. We have to have a property that is of type T.
Somewhere.
Yeah. So we'd have to have like visual as type T, and then we just do the T dot. We just do visual dot.
We could, or we could make it like we said before. We could make it so that we have an object called image. An image is of type T.
Yes.
Right?
That's what I meant.
And type T is going to be the something that we're extending. So for example, now this means that our object is now a display object if we're going to inherit from it. So example will be, and I'm not going to do this, guys. I'm just, because I can see already we're going to have awesome problems, right, to solve. But basically what I would do is I would say private underscore image, right? Image would be of type T, right? Where image would be a sprite, or image would be a sprite sheet. A bitmap. And then inside of here, this name is image string. It wouldn't be this name. It would be image.name would be image string. So it'd be this dot image, this dot underscore image dot name, right? And now this is interesting because it says doesn't know what type T is, right? But we know it's of some kind of display object. So it doesn't know what that is. So we could leave it the way it is, but now we have a display object that contains another display object. Image is a display object. So when we move stuff around, if we want to display the image, we'd have to add the image to the, it'd have to be public. We have to make a getter or setter that returns image. And when we add something to the, to render, which is going to be our image, we can't add this. We'd have to add the image to this, to the scene.
Which means
it would have to be like player.image, this.add player.image, right? This.add, enemy.image and that kind of stuff, right? So this is where I had a problem. And I'm showing you this because I thought about doing what you thought about doing, like with me. I thought about what you thought about. And then I said, nah, doesn't make any sense. The other thing we could do to make it different is we could have a interface. We could use interfaces to define both objects as game objects. So we could implement an interface. And the interface so instead of making game object an abstract superclass like this, we can make it an interface instead, right? So that might be helpful, but only from an identification perspective in this point, right? It's almost like handshaking now. So if I said, okay, well, guess what? Because I can't do multiple inheritance. That's not allowed, right? In C++, I would have multiple inheritance going on, right? Or I would do something different, right? Maybe I would have, like we talked about before, an entity component system where the renderer would be the type, whether it's, I would have a generic type called renderer, and then my renderer would either be a bitmap or a sprite. I'm not doing that. Okay, that's just going to take way too long. So here, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, if I call this interface, and my interface is not going to extend anything, right? Because I mean, I can't extend something with my interface. I mean, I can, but all this stuff in my interface, right? As an example, if I said my interface, my game object, I could do this. But once I say extends, my interface actually becomes like something I can't add getters and setters to. Like all this stuff is going to go bye-bye.
Yeah, that
right?
has to go in the two versions, and we still have code.
And this I could keep though. All these, I definitely can keep this in my interface. This I don't keep in my interface. However, I could have getters and setters that I just specify. I don't even think I can even do that. I think I can only do these. Almost like a structure, like a struct in C++, right? So I wouldn't be able to do any of this stuff.
I thought it wouldn't mind as long as you don't have an implementation.
Well, let's see if that's true. So if I did something like this and this, then you're going to see a problem. See? Like it doesn't allow that. Even if I did this, it just says, oh, what does it say? Well, so I can't, this display object stuff I can't do. That definitely is useless. So I say interface game object, and then it says this is being used as a value here. Number refers to a type. This being, I'm using getters instead. I can't do getters and setters, right? So these are all gone. I mean, that would be, and the constructor, that would be gone too. Initialize could stay. So that definitely could stay. Because it's going to have this, private initialize method that I don't have any kind of thing for. I could do this. That could work. And I could definitely do this. But, okay. Now it's going to say something else. Private can only appear on a number. What it says?
Cannot appear on a type member.
On a type member, right? Yeah, because the thing is, private would mean that I can't extend it. It's interface, right? It's an interface. So either it's public or protected. And it can't be protected because it's got to be wider than this. Public would work, but I think I got to take them all away because it can't be any of those things because it's an interface. So all those things, private, would have to go away. So really what I'm left with is something that does this. So what am I saving myself?
Oh, I see. So you could still have the getters and setters, you just couldn't call them get and set. You'd have to have the declaration.
Yeah, but then that defeats the purpose.
Yeah.
And these abstract types, can I have abstract types inside of interfaces? Yeah. So these abstract types would have to go, right? However, I could have these like this. I could call them reset, start, and so on. Those things could all be good. Okay, so that's what it would be down to. And guess what? There is no public and private methods. It would just be interface methods like this. These are all the interface methods. Some private looking, some public looking, right? And again, initialize would return void, and so would update position, which we didn't do actually. All right, so that would be our interface. And all the interface would be is like, I could inherit or implement this interface in my other two things. So if I went back to here, why is this having a problem again? I don't know what that's, why this is having a problem.
Oh. I think it's still looking at the old version before you just saved.
That's okay. I'm just going to save everything again, and that'll save it. But if I go back to, yeah, if I go back to this, let's save this. So save, good. And if I look at my game object, Sprite game object superclass, let's try that one first. So if I said I want to implements, right? So extends this, but implements. I also want to implement game objects. So objects.gameObject. I could do this. And then it's going to say, no, I don't think so. It incorrectly implements it because property width is private in type super sprite game object, but not in the game object superclass because it can't be private. It's an interface. That makes sense. So that wouldn't work. I'm just showing you that I've tried different implementations before, and it won't allow it to happen. Okay, so interface, that's out. Can't be an interface. Okay, how about, I'm trying to save myself some effort. We have some duplication, right? How about, a class? Well, I can't make it a class because I'm directly inheriting from create.js.sprite. So this is where this stuff would have to be, I'd have to define it, and I would implement this as a component where I would have height, width, half, like almost like I would call it params or something like that, my params class. And my params class would have width, width, half height, position in his colliding, and it would be params dot whatever, params dot, and so on. So it would be another layer to the same thing that I've got going on right here. So yeah, I would save some problems, but I would cause other ones. So that's why, my friends, going back to what we did before, we need to not do this. Not because I don't want to, but because for us in JavaScript, it just doesn't make sense. Not like the way we've done it. How about that? All right, so let's save everything. In fact, let's file save all. And we should say all these things got removed. We updated our Sprite, our Ocean. Because ocean.ts got moved. We changed this back to bitmap game object, which is good. And this is the stuff we changed. We'll say that updated game object names. That's what we've really done. And we will accept this commit, and we will push our changes. That's it. Now let's see if it works. Does it still work? Are we in trouble? Did it break anything? No, we're good. Are we good? Do you understand why I did that? I wanted to show you that, hey, this is great, but in another universe, right now we have no time to remake our game engine to use an entity component system that uses an object as an entity, as opposed to directly inheriting from, because we're directly inheriting from, bitmap and Sprite. It doesn't make any sense. And again, this is the part of the problem of using a monolithic class like this to do what we're doing. Okay, which I'm not a fan of anymore. Used to be. It was in the simpler days of JavaScript. But nowadays, when you get more object-oriented, you kind of think of better ways to do things. Okay, cool. New feature. I want to add an explosion. This is part of my animation. And I also want to add a coin. Let's do the coin first. Explosion is more difficult because it has to explode and go away. It has to explode and go away, right? It's almost like an object of its own. Coin, though, is going to save us some trouble in some ways. So let's do this. So let's go into scripts. We're going to make a new object called coin. So new file, going to be coin.ts. Here's our coin. It's going to be in the module objects, and it's going to be, we're going to export a class called coin, which is going to extend objects.sprite game object. Right? That's the first thing. Next, what we're going to have in here is a couple of things. We need to have some private instance variables. We need to have some public properties. We need to have a constructor. We need to have some private methods and some public methods for the coin. And our coin is complaining because guess what? It says, you got some stuff that's not been implemented. Let's implement those things. These are all the things we need to implement for my coin. They're all public. So I'm going to cut these out and put them under public methods. We need to include these anyway. So might as well do it now. So this, 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 and this. And we'll just give some spaces here so that happened there. so that everything is good. So these are the things we need. We also need a constructor. My constructor is not going to take anything, but what it's going to do is call the super constructor and pass in the image string, which is going to be coin. Okay, that's the coin string. Yay. Super. Yeah, anything else? Well, so when the coin gets instantiated, it's going to start spinning, right? And the coin is going to have the same position as the island. So the island is going to come down. The coin is going to be layered on top of the island. And when the, instead of the player hitting the island now, we don't care about the island anymore. The player wants to hit the coin to make all that noise. The coin is not going to reset, right, until it's off screen, okay? So what we want to do is we want to make the coin invisible, right? And we want to set it so that it's not colliding, or it is colliding until it's off screen, if that makes sense, okay? So we start the coin off, it updates, the coin is not going to move because the coin is going to move every frame wherever it is, right? We're going to create a move function for the coin because if you realize what let's take a look at some things like the island. So the island has, it's going to call start. Oh yeah, we need to do this. So that's definitely something we want to do in the coin constructor. We want to call the start method. So that's something we want to do. So looking at the island, we have a move function and a check bounce. Those two things definitely have to be there. We're going to put them in as private methods. But the move, well, that's going to be an issue, right? Because we want to definitely move it down the same speed as the island, right? So vertical speed is something we need. Here's my island. And we're going to check out this vertical speed number for the island, which we're going to include in the coin. So yeah, vertical speed. Also, the island defines vertical speed inside my start method or my reset, which is this. Here's my reset method. And the height and all this stuff in false colliding, all that stuff got to come in, but vertical speed is going to come in because it's going to be the same speed as the island. So we're going to move that into the reset method. And we're also going to move in is colliding as false when it becomes reset, right? But only when it's reset. Cool. Well, on start, we're going to definitely reset and set the regex and reg-y values to half width and half height. We're definitely going to do that. So we're going to call this. So almost exactly the same here in my start method. That's all good for the coin, right? On update, I definitely want to move and check bounce. So those two things I'm going to do as well. So that is going to go on my coin. Cool. All right, so we got some stuff. And when check bounce is greater than this, then it's going to reset. And but what about the reset function? The reset should really reset vertical speed and is colliding. But what's going to happen is it's going to have the island is going to have its own coin. Does that make sense? So I don't want to care about the coin won't know where it is. It's just going to reset. And the reset, when it happens, the reset's going to happen when the island resets. Okay, that's what's going to happen. So I'm not going to actually do it here. However, it's going to take care of its own movement downward. So wherever it's reset from an X perspective, right, all the coin has to do is just update every frame, and we're good to go. It's also going to reset itself as soon as it gets off out of bounds. Okay, so that's what's going to happen as well. Okay, so those are all good things. This is the coin. We can also see if any of this makes sense when we try it out. All right, next. What I want to do for now is I need to put this coin in place. So I'm going to say index.html, and the island needs to know about the coin because the island is going to instantiate an object of type coin. So I'm going to put it in play before the island class, just before. Okay, here's something. Definitely, we should know about the island or the coin as well. So let's put that there, coin. There it is. So a coin gets added in. Fantastic. And what I want to do now is in my island class, we're going to make some changes here. So here's my island class. In my island class, what we're going to say is this. We're going to say that, why am I looking at label? We're going to say that island. Okay, cool. So how does the island change? So the island is going to start. It's going to call this. It's going to move. Yeah. And on reset, I'm going to do a couple things. When it resets, it's going to call, it's going to change the position of the coin object. But I need to have a coin object for it to change. I'm going to say something like private underscore coin, which is of type objects.coin, is definitely going to be part of the island. So the island is going to keep track of or instantiate a coin. That's one way it can be done. Can anyone think of another way of this being done? Why would this be a problem? Can anyone think of why this would be a problem? Well, one of the problems are if I add a coin, I need to add it to the current scene, right? So I need to be able to do that. Like from the island class.
Referencing the island to the scene.
I got that already. I got the, oh, wait, did I call this coint? Oh, this is bad. This is really bad. This is super bad. Let's just rename this thing. Rename it to coin. What the heck? See what happens when you're excited? Tired. I'm always tired, but that's not good. Let's just delete this part. Yeah, that would be very bad. Coin. What did we do? But no, we did the wrong one. We deleted the wrong ones. But that's okay because once we save it, it'll just remap, right? So coin save. All right, so that just regenerated them all. All right, cool. Yeah, so coin gets created, whatever. And if I create it in my island class, so here's my island class, I create a coin, yay. And maybe in my start method somewhere, I create a new coin. And when the island is added in my start method, the coin is added on top of it. Okay, so one time. Could do that. And I know that inside of my managers, in my game manager, I do have something called current state, which is a config. And I should have my current scene somewhere. It'd be nice to have a current scene here, but I don't. I mean, I have a current state, which is my config, but I don't have the current scene. So that would be an issue. I don't know what the current scene is. I don't know. I have no idea inside of my game what the current scene is currently at. I don't know. And that might cause me an issue. However, I could add the coin separate, and I could keep track of where it's being added, right? So I could pass a reference to the coin object in here, right? But that would be a problem. I could also create a setter or getter, right, for another object. Maybe, for example, my island, that wherever my island is, my coin tracks. So that's something I could do as well. So lots of choices here. What do you guys recommend? Because again, this is your thing now. You're at the point now where, you should. Huh?
I kind of like just updating the coin's position relative to the
island
that it belongs to.
So I'm making it belong. That's what you're saying. Okay. So like a parent class, right? That's what we're kind of doing. All right. So let's explore that for a second. So first of all, let's assume that the coin is going to be instantiated. We're going to instantiate that in the start method. So we're going to say something like, in the start method, I'm going to make a new coin. I'm going to say this dot underscore coin, is equal to a new objects dot coin. So there's the coin object. Yay! It's in existence now. Okay.
Yeah. And then in update, you do
cool.
if coin.
Well, okay. In update, what I'm going to do is I'm going to update the coin object because it's going to exist for sure. Yeah. I'm going to move check bounds and then update the coin. So I'm going to say this dot underscore. Away, right? Was that?
When you catch it, it'll go away.
It's all going to be, but the coin is always going to be updated, right?
I thought we delete the object. Okay.
Coin. Up. I won't delete it. I'll just update it. I'll put it off screen.
Okay.
So, so this is interesting. This coin dot update says it does not update on coin. It's capital U. All right. So good. So it'll update the coin. Good. So because the coin will be reset, And then what's going to happen is the island is going to go off screen, and the coin is still going to drop, and that's bad. Right? We don't want the coin to move when it's off screen. It's going to reset, but we don't want the update to move the coin. Well, it's a bad thing, because what if it moves on its own and somewhere else off the island? Like, for example, it might move down into the screen and then reset to the island afterwards, right? That might happen, because the island's going to probably reset. Like, for example, it's probably not going to happen, okay? Because what's going to probably happen is the only way I can touch the coin is if the plane touches the coin. So the plane, here's the coin, the plane touches the coin, and then the coin resets. Then the island moves off screen. The coin comes down a little bit, and then as soon as the island resets, the coin resets to its position, and then it comes down again.
What I was saying would be like when the player touches the coin actually goes down
and doesn't reset.
Until
and when
the island resets, you reset the coin.
Okay, we can do that. So we can say that's a good idea. So is declined as a false. We'll say this dot coin dot reset. So we reset the coin as well. Okay, there it is, right? And it resets off screen. And we're also going to say that the coin, this dot underscore coin, the coin doesn't know about the island, right? Position, right? Here we go with the position problem again. The position is going to be equal to this position. So the coin dot position is equal to this dot position. We can say that because it makes a copy.
Do we have position working?
We do. But this is a problem, because I can't say that this is equal to this, because there is no overloaded constructor that does that. There's no compatible call signatures for this. Left-hand side of the assignment, there is no overloaded operator. I can't do this. However, I could do this, right? I could do this, and I'm going to have to do both, actually. This is equal to this. Why?
Maybe position is the getter.
Sorry?
Maybe the position was getter, not a.
No. I'm pretty sure that the coin itself, and this, I don't think I have a setter or anything like that on the object. I think the superclass Sprite superclass defines position up here. So I'll say that this position, look, it's equal to a new position. Oh, no, it's a getter and setter. That's fine. So that's a new position. But when I do a get, I return this position. Yeah. This position is using it as a method, right? So no, it's not. It's a getter. It's a getter and setter. I can do what I'm doing, right? The problem is, see, I did that. Oh, I see. Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
I meant this.
But I think you can just use the indexing because it takes a vector too. Yeah, so you can just use position on both sides.
Let's see. This dot position. Okay, but I still need to do X and Y. I have to say this dot underscore coin. Actually, did I fix it? I think I fixed it. Can
we look at Sprite?
Yep, we can. I think I fixed the problem. But so what I said was when I change the position, we know that's a problem. The position is equal to new position. I set this. Did I do anything with it?
I don't think we ever updated X and Y.
And then I update position. I call update position. That's what this does. Position X is equal to this dot X, and then.
So it would wait a frame essentially before.
Yeah, we're just gonna do it now. Because it is what it is, man. I mean, I'm not gonna take a chance. I'm gonna say that this dot underscore coin dot X is equal to this dot X, and the position is used for collision. That's why we're using it. This dot underscore coin dot Y is equal to this dot Y. Okay, that'll cover everything. That make sure that it'll happen. Okay, so that's the reset part. So reset, it resets position and location. And when it resets, when the coin resets, a couple things happen. Vertical speed becomes 5 again. And we don't have to do this on resets. We should probably do it on start, because the only thing that's going to happen is that is colliding is going to be false. So this can only happen once. Sorry, but you don't have to do that here on read. We don't have to keep on setting the speed, only once. So start, resets, is colliding is false. And then the only thing that reset does for this thing is change is colliding to false. So that's what reset does. It doesn't reset the coin, doesn't change this position or anything like that. It just sets colliding to false. That's all it does for now. And we may think about not even doing this. We may just set the is colliding to false. So I think we can do that directly. All right, vertical speed is a number. Y move, we're moving down the position, and it doesn't matter. We're going to keep moving down and not bother anybody until we get reset. And we'll reset, we're just going to redo this, and we're going to check bounds again. I think this will work. Okay, so yeah, so that's what this does, the coin. And you know what? We might as well, in the reset, we'll call this reset coin. So I'll say that I will refactor. We'll call this new method reset coin point. Reset coint, all right, which is going to do this, and it's going to be private. So we're going to refactor this one, rename. We're going to rename this to underscore, because that's what it's going to be, reset coin. This private method, we're going to cut it and put it in the private section, which is where it should go. Yes. Okay, so that's what this does. So this way it keeps track of the reset, and it's outside of the reset method. And that I like that more. It's just from an organizational perspective. Okay, cool. So we've created the coin, we reset the coin, we update the coin, we don't destroy the coin yet. We're not going to. However, one of the things we need to do with the coin is we need to add it to the display list. And the coin itself, this coin, is not something that's displayed. So there's two ways to do this. I could make a reference to the display list object. I could, and then add it to the display list from here, right? Or I could make a getter for the coin and add it to the display list in the scene. Something like island.coin, add this.island.coin to this playlist. And you could more control when it's going to be added as opposed to being it done here, because we don't know when this is going to be added compared to the coin, because it's asynchronous. So yeah, so we'll decouple it. So we'll say something like, because remember, it's again rendering, right? Rendering and updating bad. So here we want to make a getter, which is going to be this thing called coin, which is going to return type objects.coin, and it's going to return this.underscore coin. And that's all we need. We don't need a setter because we're never going to reset our coin. We're just going to make a read-only object called coin that we can update. And then in our scene class, which is going to be our play.scene, we are going to add child island, and immediately afterwards, this.addChild, this.underscore island coin. That makes sense? Because, yeah, this will be in the exact position. The coin will be underneath the player. It'll work. Now, we're not going to do collisions yet. Let's see if we can make the coin appear and animate. So, yeah, start. It
looks pretty good.
A little bit fast. Really fast.
It looks like it's flopping.
Yeah, it sure does, doesn't it? Yep, it's not centered at all. So that's a problem. But it's good. At least we got it working, and you know what? It resets wherever the thing is. It's good. We've got somewhat partial power, Captain. Let's see what the problem is with the island. So the coin object does it. So coin starts. Oh yeah. What we didn't do with the island, what we did was we said, hey, let's set the regx and reg y position somewhere. Where did I do that? Probably here. Start. Did I not do that for the coin in the start method? I did. So, what happened here?
Something wrong with the sprite size?
Maybe.
Are the sprites different shaped rectangles?
Well, Texture Packer may have made them all like different sizes, so
they wouldn't stay
For it to
centered.
properly like animate, you'd have to make them all the same.
Let's see. Maybe you're right.
At this point, we're just making it.
You're absolutely right.
Oh yeah.
That's a problem. Guess what we're gonna have to do?
Refresh it every frame. The
No, God, no. Well, we could. That's a fix. We could refresh every frame. We could say
no, that wouldn't fix it.
regex and reg y wouldn't do it every frame
You would
because it would
do it
be.
after.
It's gonna do. Yeah, it's gonna be too late. Yeah. So what we could do is re-import this thing. Now, these objects, what they're doing is they're compressing, and I think it's an option here where it says pack best. Force squared scale mode.
Before we make sure that it
Is
is
sick.
texture vectors fault,
It
we
is.
check that
It
the
is.
PNGs are all square.
Oh, though yeah, that's for sure. We have to check for sure. Let's take a look at that.
Yeah,
That would be
that's
really
the only
weird.
thing.
That would be really weird for me to know. Look, they're not.
Hmm.
See, it is definitely texture packer's fault because if I open up this PNG object, you can see that there's extra spaces on the left-hand side.
Oh yeah.
And if I open up this little thin one,
On both sides.
then it's got both sides. It's got space on both sides. So that is a problem.
So you need an option to tell texture packer not to trim.
Yeah.
Trim mode.
Trim mode,
None.
none. And that, my friends, I need to regenerate this thing, which also needs to
order
change.
gets-
I think the order should be preserved because it goes here, and then all these. So that's okay. It just means that the map is going to change. Some minor changes. So let me just fix that. So we'll call this not sprites, but texture map. Okay, that's what's going to happen, and I just need to publish it.
The only thing we need to get would be the frame.
We're gonna do it. We're gonna do it. Sorry, I know these are all the this is the stuff, right? We wouldn't know the coin is messed up unless we did this, right? So we're gonna go back to our game, and we're gonna go to our assets, sprites, this one, and this one, and this one we need. So we need to do this again. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So all this is fine. This isn't changed. I'm pretty sure. It's this that's changed. These frames.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do is take frames and just replace them. And that's why I keep 2 separate copies, because for exactly this reason. So this, and I'm going to go back to my game.ts, and I'm going to just replace the frames up until about right here. And look, it kind of, that was weird.
No, it did it properly.
Yeah, but they're
It
all
didn't give you
zeros.
the wrong pivot. Oh, that was why. The trimming is the pivot.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. And that's why it would have worked if I kept the trimming,
Yeah.
because then it would have moved the regex and reg y values around.
Yeah.
And that's why I did those things. But we don't need those things. And so don't laugh at me.
We're not laughing at you. We're just relieved that we figured
And
out why those exist.
yeah, we're good. It's a little fast though, like you said. So that needs to change. But at least it works looks like it's doing. I think we should probably slow down to half speed myself. Right? So that's one thing we need to change. So let's go back to our code. That was a quick fix. That wasn't so bad, right? If we go back to our code inside of game.ts in our speed, definitely even the coin, which is up here, should be something like 0.5, not 1. And that means, that leads me to believe that chances are the explosion will have to be 0.5 too, because it's about the same number of frames. It'll be too fast looking, right?
Yes, yeah.
But we'll see.
Depending on how old of a game we want it to look like.
Yeah, that's true too.
No, but older games look cool with it.
That's actually real. Yeah, that's really cool. Actually, look. So the coin looks pretty good now. All right, coin is flowing. No, not yet. Come on, one thing at a time. Can't do both. That's where we get into trouble, right? You little man, it's bad, right? All right, so yeah, so the coin works well, but now we don't want the island to go away. We want the coin to go away. Coin should be off screen. It should be invisible, right? When the island collides with the coin should should still be in colliding state, right? And be invisible. And when it gets reset, It should be visible again. Okay, so now this is the next step. Next stage is we've added the coin. So let's do it. These are all the things we changed for the coin. Woohoo! I know it's nuts. But this is what happens when you add a new feature in. Okay, so added coin to the game.
And to be fair, this is keeping the map and JS files for each one. Which
That's correct.
We probably wouldn't need.
Yep. All right, so la la la. That makes sense? Good. And now, once we've got that, we want to change a couple of things. The collider is the collision manager, right? So we're going to go to the managers. We're going to go to collision. And we're going to say the following. We're going to say, well, we don't care about the island anymore. We only want to care about the coin, right? And this is where we're going to play the yay set, only when we hit the coin. Okay, that's cool. Island, we're not even going to bother. We're going to run over the island, and it's not going to reset. But we will reset the coin. So the coin, we're going to set the coin's
Y position.
Yeah.
Or a canvas full?
No, we could do that, or we could set the Y position like something like 320 or whatever, or something.
Or we could X.
Or we can set the opacity to 0. That might be the other thing we can do. And then when we reset, we can reset the opacity back to 1. That might be the better thing to do. Okay, so we're going to say that, can we do that? We can. We can say object2.opacity or alpha, I think it's called, is equal to 0, right? So that's what we're going to do. So the alpha is 0. And then when we reset, which is in the coin, we're going to say that whenever reset, the alpha is just going to reset to is equal to 1.0. You can do that. And that should be okay, right? So let's see if we can do that. So we didn't, no, it doesn't, no, no, and no score, and no score for this, huh? Correct. We checked island collision, not coin collision. So that's happening in my play.ts file. So my play.ts file, I'm saying that check collision with player and enemy, check collision with player and island. We got to check collision with player and coin. So we're going to say island.coin. That make sense? Cool. The island's coin. Again, this is a different implementation that you would have seen online the last time I did this, right? Because it might be better, right? Actually, I want to keep the opacity for the clouds page row for next time. Bunch of stuff. Yeah, so let's see if this works. So no coin. This is good. No coin. And you can't collide with something that doesn't exist. So therefore, it looks good. It looks like I'm collecting coins. And I can have more than one now because the islands don't really matter. Okay, cool. This is good. And I can still wipe out the plane. Yes. And now we need the explosion. We're good to go. I don't know if we can get it done in 20 minutes, or 15 minutes, but let's try. We've got the pattern, though. The pattern is down because we've already figured out the coin. But the explosion is another matter altogether. And I'm going to talk about this because here's the challenge with the explosion, okay? So the explosion happens. It's a separate object. It spawns wherever the player or thing that's colliding is going to appear. So if it's for the player, there's two types of explosion. One for the player, one for the enemy, right? If it spawns for the player, an explosion object will be generated. It's going to be generated by the collision manager, right? So what if I have a series of explosions, right? Maybe 5 of them that I pre-instantiate. Does that make sense? Right?
Yes, but I foresee an issue with how the animation works.
You're right, but I can go to and play. I can start the animation again whenever I instantiate the thing. So I can go to and play, and if I go to and play the animation, it resets the animation to the beginning, right? That's what I'm saying. The explosion is a little weird, right? So now the one thing is I'm going to instantiate a new explosion, and the explosion is going to be at the position of the game object that I know what it is. I don't care what the game object is that I'm colliding with, but if I collide with my enemy and my plane, either one, it's going to spawn a brand new explosion object, right? the brand new explosion object needs to be managed, all right? Because it needs either to destroy itself, right? Or it needs to reset. And I recommend we have a reset for it somewhere off screen. Like when I have, maybe I only have 2 of them or whatever. But that means my collision manager needs to know about explosion manager. An explosion manager needs to keep track of several explosions, just like bullet manager does. So it's like almost like going to need, I can't just make an explosion. I also need to make a manager for the explosions, right? That's one option. So I'm talking options really quickly because, guys, we have no plan for this thing, and we need to have a plan before we implement. Otherwise, we're going to be late. 7:06 already. We need to have a quick solution. Solution 2. We create an explosion, and when it's off screen, it destroys itself. All right. So it's like it's one of those things that are a little bit different than we've done in anything else. We have an explosion, we instantiate it. As soon as it's instantiated, it plays, right? And then when it leaves the screen, because it will give it a chance to leave the screen because it's going to move, right? It's going to move down screen the same rate as the plane, or maybe it won't. It'll just stay in the middle of the screen like this. And when it's done, once it's done playing its animation, it'll just destroy itself, right? Now, in order for it to destroy itself, it needs to remove itself from the playlist and clean itself up. Guys, that's a lot of code, right? I'm telling you right now, and it sometimes doesn't always work because it gets instantiated, and it also has to be instantiated in the right position. And a good example of that is when the thing gets instantiated, if it gets instantiated underneath the cloud or underneath the ocean or something weird, that could happen too, because it's going to get instantiated in order. It's probably going to be instantiated in the top of everything else. That's where it's probably going to go. So thoughts? What are your thoughts? How would you do this thing?
I still think that creating and destroying.
Creating and destroying?
Faster to get it done.
Let's do it. We'll do creating and destroying this time around. All right? All right, let's do creating and destroying. So creating and destroying requires me to make a new explosion object. We don't have much time anyway, so let's just do this. New file, explosion.ts. The explosion.ts is going to be very similar to the coin in that it's not going to be dependent on other things. So let's look at the coin object. Here it is. I'm just going to copy everything for now. And I'm going to go and put it inside the explosion. And paste. And at the top here, we're going to call this explosion. This is going to be called explosion. Right? It's going to have a vertical speed. No, it's not going to move. As soon as it gets generated, it's going to play itself and then disappear after it's done.
So in order to have it disappear, or just to make it as simple as possible, should we just have it be counting down frames?
It needs to, hold on a second. The move function doesn't need to exist because it's not going to exist. No, it's not frame counts. It's
we don't need check bounds either.
No, we don't need that either because it's not going to move. It's not going to be anywhere outside of my thing. The reset is not going to be a reset. It's just going to be a destroy. The destroy method is going to be called this one, where we left it already, right? Update doesn't. There's nothing in an update. Start is where it's going to need. So half width and half height, vertical speed, and reset is not going to need to be called. But what needs to happen is as soon as this thing gets instantiated, it's going to play. However, in my start method, I need to set up an event listener so that when this animation ends, this dot on, and I believe it's animation end, we're going to call the destroy method, this dot destroy. And to check this, because it's a sprite, I'm going to go to the documentation. You're right. And I'm going to go to the sprite itself because each sprite has events. And you can see that animation end is an event. So animation end is going to generate it when the animation reaches its end. It's going to play it once. The animation is going to end. And when it does, it's going to destroy itself. Now, here's the thing. When it destroys itself, it's going to remove itself from the display list, right? How?
They just have
You know, so I want to remove this child from the display list. Almost like I want to remove this from the display list. Okay, cool. That's the first thing. If I could do that, if I could say that this dot current scene, because I don't have a current scene, and now we've been avoiding it, we need to create one.
Remember, I found that you can do like this dot parent.
We can get its parent.
Hold on. Say that again.
Either we can do the current scene, or we can just get its parent and remove it from.
All right, so I could say this dot parent, right? This dot parent, right? And dot remove child, and then this. So that's the child we want to remove. That makes sense? All right, so it plays, it gets removed, and now I want to destroy itself. How does it get destroyed? Because it gets instantiated, how do I clean it up? Because I made it. It's the thing, right? I removed it. And now, how do I destroy it? How do you destroy stuff in JavaScript?
this equals no. I'm joking. That's not true.
Well, it needs to destroy itself, and it's going to call almost like its destructor, right? Now, does JavaScript have a destructor? Could I go delete this? Could I do that? Right? And the thing is, what does it say? It says the operand of a delete operator must be a property reference. So it won't do that. Can't be delete. How do I clean up the memory? Because otherwise it's going to hang in memory. Every time I have an explosion, I'm going to have an extra piece of object hanging in there. How to delete a class or an object in things. So let's look that up. And so delete object in JavaScript, because not even TypeScript is a JavaScript thing. So the delete operator, okay. Okay, it says the delete operator deletes only reference, never an object itself. If it did delete the object itself, any other reference would be dangling like a C++ delete, and accessing one of them would cause a crash. To make them all turn null would mean having extra work when deleting your memory. Since JavaScript is garbage collector, you don't need to delete objects themselves. They will be removed when there's no way to refer to them anymore. It can be useful to delete references to an object if you are finished with them, because this gives the garbage collector more information about what is able to be reclaimed. If references remain to a large object, this can cause it to be unclaimed, even if the rest of your program doesn't actually use the object. So, and then another person put in, yeah, deletes the property XY, right? I mean, it could delete itself, but how do I delete, an object that I don't have?
You'd have to go to where we instantiate the explosion.
And then I can delete it.
Yeah, you'd have to have an event.
So what if I wait till the animation ends for the event I set up the event handler in the collision manager and wait till it's done and then delete it? That could work. Okay, so yeah, so this is nice, but this way, what?
Yeah, if you set it to null, it looks like it might JavaScript should like garbage.
Wait. If I say this is equal to null, right? Are you sure?
No.
Can't do that.
No, it would have to be in the place where it's
Yeah, you can't do this. You can't do this. This is no good. But this destroy would have to be called. So destroy would have to be called because we don't know which it is, and that's good. That's good. This would have to change, right? So we wouldn't call this. We would call the destroy method from outside. So cool. Let's try and use this. First of all, let's go into. I mean, it's that simple. This is a very simple object, right? So we're going to go into my index.html. It's definitely going to be somewhere over here because the collision manager needs to know about it, and so does the scene. Let's just put it at the end because it doesn't really matter. We'll just call this collision.js. Or sorry, explosion.js. There we go. All right, so explosion.js, the collision manager. Let's go back in there. And my collision manager goes here. It says, okay, cool. We made a coin, no problem. A cloud, let's make a new explosion. So we're going to say that,
So object, no, first to create. So let.
Okay, all right. So we're going to say, yeah, that, but I'm saying, but now it's going to be messed up. Well, we're going to have some other dangling stuff. We'll talk about this in a second. I'll show you what I'm talking about. So I'm going to say that let new explosion, and we can move this into a function. We'll see how this goes. Is equal to a new objects explosion, right? And oops. Okay, that's good. And then when the explosion happens, we're going to say that a new explosion is dot position. We don't care x and y. All we care about is x and y in this case. New explosion dot x, because position doesn't matter. New explosion dot x is equal to the object 2 dot x. Oh, new object. The object that I'm colliding with. Or no, object 1. It's object 1. Object 1 dot x. And new explosion dot y is equal to object 1 dot y. Okay, good. So that sets up the explosion where it's supposed to be, and that's good. And now we have to put it in the scene that way. We have to add it to the scene. We don't have access to the scene, so we have to make access. This is the place where we've never done it before. So this is new. So in my game.ts, I need to make a reference to the scene itself. This is new. I'm just putting it in order. So current scene is of type objects.scene, right? Okay, so there's the current scene. And now where do we set the current scene? It has to happen in the game, in the core game object, right? That's when it gets switched. So back to core in my game thing down in here where I set the current scene is equal to this. And I'm going to have to do that funky stuff in here. So before I add the stage object, I've got it, because it's going to be at the bottom, right? It's going to be managers.game.current scene is equal to current scene. That's the place. Otherwise, problems, right? So we got a reference to the scene now. Yay. So we think. And yeah, and then we do this, and we're going to add it to the scene. We're going to say that current scene, so managers dot game dot current scene dot add child new explosion. Good. And then new explosion. Yes, new explosion dot on animation end. Call new explosion. Oh no, call nothing. Call it in kind of an anonymous function, which we could probably make it so that no, we can do this.
Don't we have to use arrow?
Yes, we do, because otherwise we'll lose the reference to this. But which is this?
Collision, but it doesn't matter, right? Because we want to remove the reference to a new explosion. Won't we lose it anyway?
Sorry.
Put a dash.
Yeah, sorry. C++. So on collision, on animation end, we want to remove itself. So we're going to say that the new explosion dot destroy. Just want to get rid of it, remove it from the child. But we don't have to do that here. We know what the current scene is. Current scene is managers.game.current scene dot remove child, right? This new explosion.
Good practice to use the specific method.
It is. This is a better way of doing it. Destroy. Okay, so that does that. And then what we need to do is somehow destroy new explosion.
New explosion equals null. It's the only reference to it, right?
Yeah, but then question is, what happens to this thing? Because that is a new event listener. Does it go away?
Yes, it's a property of the.
I don't know. I'm worried, right? Because it's just a weird thing. well, let's try, this is just for the cloud. So we'll do the one thing for this. So playing clouds the cloud, we have this thing happening, and then we'll make this duplicated somewhere else where we have a public static method called create explosion in the collision manager. Okay, let's try this out. Well, that's how it goes, right?
No, this is fun. This is the parts that I find fun.
Well, this is the parts we have to find. This is the stuff that we have to think. So, boom. Okay, that was pretty good. Boom. Boom, boom, right? This is good. And it looks like there is like we're getting hit now, like, right? So now maybe it's too fast. I think it's too fast. I think now if I was going to go back to the, it's got to even be slower than this. It's got to be the old school explosion way of doing stuff. So go back to this and go up to the explosion. Maybe, yeah, really slow and see what that happens. So it'll hang out for a bit longer. So, and then boom. Boom. Very old school. Boom, right? And let's try this out. So, boom. But now we know that we've been hit and where we go hit, right? So this is kind of cool. And we're good. That's the explosion. Okay. Wait, we're not done yet. We just did it for one, and we need to do it for the other, and we don't want to duplicate our code. I need 2 more minutes for your time, guys. We need to put this all in a method. We need to call this thing, right? So here, let's put this in a method. Right. That's why the animation end thing is really cool, because it has its own built-in event dispatcher for this. They thought about this. This is where you would have to, if you didn't have Crate.js, like if you were using something like P5, I don't know what you would do. Seriously. I'm not sure that they can handle animations the same way. Maybe it's something simpler. Who knows? All right. So I'm going to right click here and I want to refactor, and I'm going to pull out a new extract method in the collision manager class. And we're going to call this method, wow, look how it's doing that. Collision.method. Explode or create explosion. It's really a creational method, right? Create explosion.
But when you were saying about P5.js having support for it, it doesn't have by default.
Yeah, so we have to figure that out. So here's create explosion on object 1. That's interesting. We have to get object 1 in there. And that makes sense, because now where is that creation method? Where the heck did it go? It is private static. Oh, that's neat. I like that.
They make it as a static by default.
I like it private. That is good. A private static object that creates an explosion. It's not going to work. I don't know if that's going to work.
Sure.
Well, let's see what happens. Now you need a object 1 objects, that's Sprite, that passes in. And it does all this work for us. That's great. Okay, let's see if that would be amazing if we, wow, thank you, Visual Studio Code. Right? I'm just saying. Okay, now I collide with my enemy. I could collide with my enemy and die too. So let's do this part. So what if I hit my enemy? And when I hit my enemy, if object 1 name is equal to bullet, then the enemy dies, right? The enemy dies anyway. So yeah.
Same call, but you reference object 2.
Yeah, so I do this and I say object 2 is the thing that needs to be called. And this would be if it's not the bullet that hits the enemy, then the enemy, I hit the enemy, so it's object 1 again. Right? So that's pretty cool if that works that way. Let's see what happens. If we do it, then we're good to go, right?
We have to check if
boom, we hit.
Listener gets the reference.
I know, and then boom, 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 we got hit twice. And what about if we hit the enemy? Can we destroy the enemy plane? And we don't know. We don't see it anywhere. Oh no! Oh, well, that was weird. That's cool. We're getting good feedback now, but we don't want feedback. We want and I may have to check it.
Make the plane slower.
No.
Like I've been asking you forever.
No, it's got to be fast. Oh.
Very good.
Hey, you know what? We're testing out level 3 right now. Okay, that's what it is. It is. This is what the final level would look like for sure, because we have an enemy. We got these crazy clouds. We've got 5 lives still somehow, and we do. We need to have invulnerability frames. So when you get hit, you have like a second. Okay, no, it didn't work.
Also,
Huh?
have an invincibility frame.
It wouldn't be hell. We just make this thing. I've done it before in other iterations of this code.
No, I'm saying it would be like helpful.
Oh, helpful. Yeah. You don't die twice. You know, you can have a second before you become instantiated again back into the game. Yeah, iframes would be totally the way to go for this thing, because otherwise we're going to have is some really weird stuff going on with this. So this is good, but yeah, we just confirmed. So somehow the explosion's not happening for this. Okay, but what if I collide with a plane? Do I get an explosion? I think I do. Yes. Okay, so that worked. So when I collide with the plane, I die, and I can die with the island too, but not the other way somehow.
And also, we don't die to their bullet. We don't die to their bullet.
We don't, eh?
Well,
So, here's. So this one we have to put that in there. So this we have to put in. So object one, let's do one at a time. So this will be us dying to their bullet. And yes, we did. Okay, that's cool. So that works. But what about this one? So when the bullet hits the plane,
Oh, it's because you reset it before you create.
and then we have to do the other way around. So we have to go do one of these. So and instead of doing that, we're going to do this, and that should do it. Pretty good, guys. That means we have an explosion now. And we have almost everything implemented that I wanted, right? Not quite everything, but you know what? It's pretty good. I mean, again, I consider this my alpha, or actually more like a first playable. This doesn't have everything. I don't have more than one scene. Okay, that's cool. That was weird thing though. Cool. It is tough though, Pedro. It is really tough to play this game. So
When I said things about making the game harder, you didn't want it.
no.
No, just the cloud. I don't know how to make it.
The clouds are really hard. Yeah, the clouds make it hard, but this is cool. So now you have some good feedback for this game. We have the explosions happening, and you know, you get some good points. The other thing that's missing is some kind of power up. Remember we talked about this? I'd probably have a power up where, you know, when you get to 1,000 points, you get a free life. I think that would help. We can probably implement that really quickly if we wanted to, but that's not a big deal. Maybe those things we can do next week when we do kind of refactoring. We'll do a bit of a refactoring session and some play testing for you guys. All right. So yeah, I think we did pretty good with our timing. We got our explosion working. Now, one thing we haven't checked, and I'm a little bit worried about, is how many objects do we have in the display list? We should check to see that that really got removed.
And is the event listeners?
What happened with the event listeners? Did we have it? Can we check how many event listeners they do exist? I think we need to check all that stuff, but we can't do it right now. You know, this is the stuff that it kind of creates memory leaks. Potentially, we shouldn't have that many explosions, even if we instantiated new explosions. Essentially, it's not bullets. There's less explosions. I think it's more manageable. I mean, how many potential explosions do we have? Maybe five every screen.
Yeah, because if you see, at most we could have 5 explosions on the player, and then, well, to be fair, if you just keep playing without getting points, but that would be contrived.
Yeah, well, but those are the things we'd have to check, right? Yeah. So anyways, so here's all the changes. I would add all these changes in, and we'll say added explosion to the game. All right, so that's pretty cool. I think we've done some good work today. We've added animations, which is really cool. We had a bit of an interruption with the video, but I think you've got enough here with our new GitHub link and everything else to need anything you need to make your game look cool. Things you could do, I know it's kind of a chinsing out kind of thing. If you really must use explosions, you want to use my assets, it's okay. They're like cheesy assets from the 1980s, right? So go ahead. I recommend making your own explosions or getting your own animations. When it comes to texture packer, I know that people are going to say, I can't afford texture packer for my course, Tom. I'm not going to spend $50, but if this is what you're going to do, guys, if this is your thing, you're going to make 2D games, I really think it's worth it to get. We can use it with Unity. I use it all the time.
They have the 50% discount right now because of Black Friday.
I think it's a great time to buy it. I don't think there's a better time to buy Texture Packer. It's really a great deal for something that really makes your life a lot easier. So anyways, that's it for me, guys. Thank you so much. I'll see you next week, and we'll do play testing next week. Okay? Thanks.